LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns in application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logRhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Waterfall Security Solutions, the market leader in unidirectional gateway technology. Their industrial cybersecurity technology protects critical infrastructures and control systems from remote online cyber attacks. It's installed around the world, including nuclear plants in the US and electric grids. Their unidirectional security gateway creates an impassable physical barrier preventing communications from flowing into the industrial control network, enabling safe and secure IT and OT integration, remote monitoring, and cloud services. Visit go.waterfallsecurity.com/enterprise security. The first 100 listeners who register will receive a free copy of SCADA Security, What's Broken and How to Fix It, written by Waterfall's VP of Industrial Security, Andrew Ginter. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, securing code and connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/ESW.
Couple of quick announcements before we get started. The 10th anniversary edition of Source Boston is being held this April, including training sessions held on April 24th through the 25th and conference talks on April 26th through the 27th, featuring awesome speakers from the security community. Events will take place in Boston at the Courtyard Marriott downtown, and Security Weekly listeners get a $100 discount on either the training or the conference passes when using the discount code SecurityWeekly. Visit sourceconference.com for more information. Get out and vote for your favorite security blog and podcast. Security Weekly has been nominated for the 2017 RSA Social Security Awards Best Security Podcast. Cast your vote today by visiting securityweekly.com/vote. Also, the ad ran for Waterfall Security. Lior was actually here. It was a pre-recorded interview we did with Lior. He's an awesome guy. Fantastic interview. Make sure you check that out in upcoming Enterprise Security Weekly, and go to securityweekly.com/SCADA, and you can receive a free copy of that book, which he presented me with a hard copy, hard cover copy.
You said you were going to put it in your bathroom.
I am. I'm going to put it in my bathroom. And he said they printed like a couple hundred books to do as a promotion. And I told him, like, a lot of people, Tenable's done books, a lot of companies done books. He's like, yeah, we realized that that wasn't enough, and we're up to like 4,000 now.
Wow.
that they gave us. So
it's an area that everybody's trying to figure out. Yeah, the whole OT side of the house. Yeah.
That was really cool. So, Matt, and for those that don't know, I used to work for Matt at Tenable.
Yes.
Fun times. I was sad to leave Matt's team to pursue my other endeavors, but you've continued on with a lot of the visions and strategy that even when I was there, we were talking about, and keeping up with all these market changes. And now Tenable has released Tenable.io, and essentially it's cloud-based services and products for a couple of different areas, not just vulnerability management. We talked about vulnerability management vendors expanding.
Right.
So tell us about how Tenable has done this and expanded.
Yeah, I mean, so the concept started it's been over 2 years in the works, right? When I came to Tenable back in 2014, the vision was, we had two kind of product lines, right? We had the Nessus product line, the Security Center product line, and a consolidated architecture was something that we felt we needed to do to really allow us to expand our capabilities. And so over the past couple years, we've been building kind of this new platform architecture that brings all the good core functionality of Nessus that people like, and a lot of the advanced dashboarding, reporting, trending, tracking of Security Center, and brought them together. But what we did was pretty unique, right? We didn't just take Nessus and say, well, we're just going to plop that in the cloud, which we had. We had an Nessus Cloud offering.
Right.
And we didn't take just Security Center and throw it in the cloud.
Right. Or you didn't just take Nessus and Security Center and kind of like genetically blend them together and stick them in the cloud.
Just stick them on a virtual machine and put them in the cloud and go, hey, we're done.
Yeah.
No, we literally re-architected the platform. And it's amazing because not a lot of companies get this opportunity to do something like what we did, is the ability to continue to sell an existing product line while we built really a brand new platform. And so those wheels started in 2014. The culmination of that was this week's announcement in the new Tenable IO platform. Really architected from scratch, really to bring all the goodness of Nessus and all the goodness of Security Center together in a cloud-based platform first. We are going to, what I'm hearing is this summer, is have an on-prem version of that. But it's a single code base, single architecture that runs in the cloud and runs on-premise. That's the foundation for us to now add additional capabilities and applications to the platform, because now we have this base platform foundation. And so that's really kind of what we announced this week. So not only on the vulnerability management side of what's been our core, which is important for us, and vulnerability management for us will continue to evolve into this new threat and vulnerability market that Gartner's defined, but also what additional things can we do? And you helped with some of this research back when we were looking at the web app scanners, right? If you look at our core competition, they all have web app scanning. And the ability for us to sell web app scanning into our existing customer base was something that was very important to us. So with this platform, we are now integrating some of the web app stuff that we made some acquisitions late last year, bring those capabilities into the platform. We also are adding the container security work from the FlawCheck acquisition that we also did late last year. And what we're doing now is vulnerabilities are shifting, right? You've got your device vulnerabilities. You have these applications, the custom-coded applications. You have applications being made up of these new containers. And you can't think about just vulnerabilities in the old way we thought about vulnerabilities, which is it's a device sitting on your network. No, it's applications and containers and even microservice communications. There's vulnerabilities in a lot of different places. So when we were building out the platform, not only to add new applications, we also wanted to think about how do you re-architect some of the challenges that the vulnerability management vendors have faced over the years? What is the primary key in every vulnerability management system? It's the IP address. It's not in Tenable IO. The IP address is now an attribute. So one of the things that we did is we said, how do we fix the problem with IP addresses and them constantly moving?
Right, because we did an interview on DevOps in the last episode. IP addresses are evil now as an indicator of how many because stuff just gets built and torn down, and that's
constantly.
That's how people roll today.
Right, exactly. And so how could we solve the problem of the moving IP address in the mobile world, right? Our laptops are constantly with different IP addresses. Does that mean I have to pay for every time that device shows up on a separate IP address? Well, not really, but that's how we've done it in the past. We also had to think about elasticity. Companies will spin up instances for peaks and then put them away.
Right.
And they're like, well, why should I pay for a full year's worth of
scanning
IPs,
a system that's only going to be up 4 times a year or whatever.
And it's only going to be up for a short period of time. So, granted, we have this great brand new platform leveraging all the technologies of today. It's all containerized and running in AWS and all those fancy things. But at the root, we said, how do we track assets better? And how do we come up with a better pricing licensing model for today's environments, not 15, 20 year ago environments where everything was very static, right? And so we introduced this asset tracking algorithm, and we've introduced an elastic licensing model that allows customers to burst over what they purchased, but over time let them come out so that they don't have to pay more just to fill that gap. And we got rid of the age-old question of, well, I've got 4 network devices on this box. Are you going to charge me for 1 or 4? Well, the answer was 4 in the past. Now it's 1. So we try to address a lot of those in the platform as part of this re-architecture.
Are you doing some kind of asset discovery?
So what we do is that there's an asset tracking algorithm. that uses data from our various sensors. So obviously, agents and authenticated scans give us the highest fidelity for the asset tracking. Then we drop down from there and we look at MAC address and NetBIOS names, et cetera, et cetera. And what we do is that algorithm then uses the data we're getting from the various sensors to associate and track the asset.
Right.
And then therefore, IP addresses now just become attributes to the asset. So in the new user interface, when you go and look at the asset view, you'll see the name of the asset based on where it came from, whether it was the agent, the scan, or DNS name or whatever. And then when you go look at the details, you'll see all the IP addresses that asset has been.
Right.
But all the vulnerabilities are tied to the asset. They're not tied to the IP. So not only are we changing the way licensing happens and tracking for customers, we're also not double, triple, quadruple counting vulnerabilities that used to be done in the past.
Right. That's awesome. So how are you doing on the web application side? Because you have a similar kind of, the opposite problem, one IP address but multiple applications.
Right. So on the web app side, it's all about FQDN, right? The fully qualified domain name. So when WAS rolls out, it's coming out at the end of this quarter, it'll be licensed by the application, the FQDN, and it won't matter how many systems are running behind it. Again, we'll start to collect the hosts that are running the application, but applications run on potentially multiple hosts. And what we're doing there is doing your traditional dynamic security testing against the application, just like others do in the space, but the asset is the FQDN. Right. So you'll have a combination of host-based assets from the vulnerability side, application-based assets on the web app side.
That's awesome.
And all coming together in one interface. You won't have to switch views, right?
And that's the issue, I mean, quite frankly, with a lot of other products on the market is you do have to switch to get different views of your different scan types. So putting that in one interface.
So all the assets are going to come together in one. But we're also going to add some workflow specifically for the developers to make it easier for them to use the interface when they do find vulnerabilities on the web app to really help the development side of the house a lot more than I think we've traditionally done. And so workflows.
So like Slack integration?
That's probably more, I think eventually. On the container side, there's definitely discussions about integration of the results from the FlawCheck acquisition back into the DevOps tools. That's going to be a very important part there. Because the way...
So is that in the dashboard as well? So like how does it integrate into containers, and then does it pull that back in so you see your web applications, your traditional assets, and then some of your container-based assets?
I don't know how that's going to visualize yet because I haven't seen it. What we're going to do with the container security side is it's taking the FlawCheck static analysis of the containers. And the way the process works is basically when the build system runs, they can pull it, they'll do a build, and they'll put the container into a registry, private registry. Then from the registry, we'll grab it, we'll do the analysis, and right now, all that data will be available in the interface by container. Like I said, eventually we want to tie some of that stuff back into the CI/CD tools because that's where the developers are going to use it.
Right.
But I don't know how much we're going to know about the interrelationship of the containers to the application day one. But that's definitely something that Renaud and I have been talking about a lot. Is understanding, an application is not just a static URL, right? It's made up of many microservices now.
Yes.
Each microservice has potentially multiple container instances running in it. And the relationship of all those pieces is the next challenge of the application. So we'll continue to make strides in looking at application security much more holistically.
Right. It's like I put an application in your container, and I put your container in a virtual environment. I put your virtual environment in the cloud.
Right. It gets complex really, really fast. And so, the web app scanning will do a really good job from the outside coming this way. You've got the container security coming this way, and then it's tying all those pieces together in the middle to build that holistic application security environment. And that will be the continued work that we do.
Right. That's really cool. So how is it So it's licensed by asset.
Licensed by asset.
And so, like, when you go, like, how do you go buy it? Can you just go on the website and like buy it?
So you can go out to Tenable.io, it'll redirect you to the landing page. You can get a 60-day eval right from the website. Literally, fill in your information, and with all the new APIs that we've added to the platform, it'll instantly provision an account for you.
Right.
Send you an email, log in, and you can start using the product today. Pretty easy, straightforward. Then you can. There's certain sizes we'll sell on e-com. Obviously, larger opportunities reach out to the sales guys to do that.
And then if you want to start integrating agents, are those still freely available?
Yeah.
So I can get my account, I can go get some agents, put them in some of my systems and start testing it.
So here's the really cool part, right? We also, as part of this change in pricing, we said, listen, all the scanners, all the agents, and all the passive sensors are included. So we're not charging you extra for a scanner, for a passive sensor, or for an agent.
Now, obviously, if you have all three of those, they're going to detect more assets.
Absolutely. Right. But what we don't want is to limit people from getting the data.
Yeah. Like, how many IP addresses do I have?
Right. And how many how many locations do I have? If you look at the competition, you have to buy the extra scanners. And that's an additional cost on top of just the service itself. We said, no, that doesn't make sense. Let's give the sensors away, include as part of the subscription, let them place as many sensors out there as they need, whether they have 100 locations or one. If they want to use agents, we don't really care how the data is collected. All comes back and then managed by asset.
Hold on, for our listeners, try not to play too much inside baseball because obviously I worked at Tenable.
Right.
The passive vulnerability scanner, tell our audience what that is and how it plays into the new Tenable IO and vulnerability management.
Yeah, so Tenable has had this, what used to be called the passive vulnerability scanner.
Okay, it's not even called that anymore.
No, it's called. I think it's the official name now is the Nessus passive sensor.
Okay.
So we
see how out of touch I am now.
I know. You've been gone.
I leave for a little while. You guys change
gone
everything.
for 6 months. We'll talk about naming a little bit if we have some time about how we kind of structured the name. But it's a device that sits on the network on a span port, and it watches network traffic go by. And the two main advantages it gives you under the Tenable IO platform today is discovery of assets as they connect. So the beautiful part that everybody struggles with is they don't know what's connected to their network.
Right.
The passive sensor sitting on that span port will see those assets as they come on the network without needing to scan them or install an agent on them. Okay, so we're going to help on the asset discovery side instantaneously. The second thing that passive sensor does then is based on the network traffic, it actually fires plugins on vulnerabilities.
Based on the traffic.
Based on the traffic. So again, I don't have to actively scan it, or I don't have to use the agent to get vulnerability data. So in environments like remote facilities where maybe you can't put a scanner, you could put a passive sensor that would do the asset discovery and the vulnerability detections just based on network traffic. And so it's an augment to active scans and agents to get not only your asset discovery, but also your vulnerability.
And that goes into the interface in Tenable.io?
Yeah, so all that data is coming into the Tenable.io.
I can see vulnerabilities from the passive scanning and from agents and from scanners.
Correct.
So, wow.
All three, yeah.
I told you so.
But yeah, it's all
I've always wanted that.
We got it
I
now.
think is
It's there.
No, that's awesome to hear. I've always loved, in fact, one of the reasons I came to work at Tenable because Ron described to me, Ron Goulet at the time described to me like this passive scanner, and I started working with it. I'm like, this thing's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And now that it's integrated with all of the other stuff, like that's just, it awesome.
Makes it so much easier to let customers figure out the best way to discover assets and identify where vulnerabilities on the network. It's something unique to us because of the IP protections we have around it, but it augments...
IP is an intellectual property.
Intellectual property,
yes.
not IP address. But it allows customers to have a lot more flexibility in getting the data they need into the systems. And it's always been part of our continuous monitoring story because the real-time monitoring of activity through the passive sensor is something that drove a lot of the continuous monitoring story. That's in Tenable.io day one, and so leverage it.
But it's in context of today's world, right? In a lot of times when we would talk about it years ago, we'd say, well, everyone's spinning up all these VMs in VMware. And then we're like, yeah, cloud is there, but now cloud has really taken off. DevOps has really taken off.
Right.
There's new assets, new applications.
You've got mobile
all the
devices
time.
connecting to the network constantly, right?
Yeah.
You bring in your phone, you connect to
Or your
Wi-Fi.
phone, too, yeah.
Right, or a tablet or a whatever. When you scan an environment, it's highly unlikely those devices are on during your scan window.
Yeah.
Which means you never see them. But they're on your network. They pose threats to you every single day. Passive detects them right away, which is great. And if we see vulnerabilities, those can then get highlighted. At least it's giving more insight into what's actually going on in the network instead of just weekly scans.
But it makes that asset discovery algorithm a lot more important,
It does.
because yes, with an agent, you're always able to identify what it is,
Right.
but the passive scanner is going to see like that IP address, and then the IP address is going to change or it's going to move somewhere else, and to be able to feed that back in.
Yep.
So you're always just basing on asset. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
So a lot of interesting enhancements
Yeah.
in the core platform as we released it earlier this week.
So releasing it this week, have you like beta tested it with clients or?
Yeah, so if you think about what happened, I mean, think about the transition, right? Nessus Cloud really transformed into Tenable IO, right? So all the existing Nessus Cloud customers that are out there are now running the Tenable IO code. So these new enhancements came there. So we've had people running this environment pretty early on. We've also had some pretty big beta customers. We've been working with a large service provider that's been beta-ing a lot of these capabilities with some of their customers for a while. I mean, some of the early stuff came almost a year ago, and we've been continually adding functionality. What we now have is enough critical mass in the platform capabilities to launch it commercially and as an official product, which is what we did this week.
Right.
Yeah.
And the web application scanner is pretty cool too. Does that does that reach into the internal network, or is that only external? At
Right
this
now,
point?
external. There'll be work later coming to port that. It's a new scanner, right? I think you saw in the press release, Renaud talk about it a little bit. You know, Nessus is great for what it does, but it never really handled the application very well. And so we actually went out and made an investment in a web application scanner, initially external, for external websites. I know the team's looking at how do we get that scanner able to be deployed internally. So that's kind of another scanner that will be added as part of the web app scanning application.
That's really cool. That's really exciting to see all those components come together.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's been in the works for a couple years, and so finally getting it to the point where we can release it and start talking about it, getting customers' hands on it is fantastic.
So is the passive scanner also now freely downloadable?
Yeah.
So you can deploy it
Yeah,
however
absolutely.
you like?
Yeah, you just when you go into the scan tab within Tenable IO, you'll see all the different scanner types, and when you click on them, that'll take you to the download page, and you can download all the executables for the scanner, the agents, and the passive sensor.
And then the inevitable question that we always used to get when I worked at Tenable, and I'm sure it still reigns true today, is what about the plugin feeds, and how does it get all the new updates for discovering new vulnerabilities on the passive side and getting it on the agent, and then all the subscriptions to all these new plugins, because new vulnerabilities come out all the time.
Yeah, so you know that our team, the research team that does all the plugin work, that continues. The beauty with the cloud infrastructure is all the sensors phone home. Right, so passive phone homes, scanner phones home. So they're constantly
agent phones home.
Agent phone homes, right? So as part of that, they're also phoning home for updates, and so auto updates enabled on all those devices. So as we release new plugins across the sensor set, they go out and they auto update. And that data is instantly available. And those plugins are released daily across the entire sensor set. And that doesn't change. But it's really easy now because it's just everything's phone home. So we don't have to worry about pushing updates to scanners anymore. Everything calls back to the cloud platform and gets their updates from one central place.
How do you, and it's funny because I have to ask this for our listeners, but I know the answer because I was there. How do you, I think I even developed some of the answers to this question. How do you overcome people's fear of the agent for all the reasons they fear an agent? I have too many agents. The agent can cause disruptions. The management of the agent. How do you overcome the typical agent endpoint installation of software fears?
Yeah, I mean, customers are always going to ask the question, hey, can I do more with your agent so I can remove 2 agents? Because the age-old debate. But the way our agents run are very efficient, right? And there's a lot of advantages to running our agents in the environment because they'll do basically a full authenticated scan locally, literally within like a couple minutes, and then all it does is send the resultant data back. So from a network traffic perspective, it's extremely efficient. Instead of trying to spray packets across the network, log into a box, and get that data, I can now just have that thing periodically, whatever frequency. You can set up the windows of how often you want it and what time window you want. But it just runs the local scan, sends the results back up, extremely efficient. It also addresses some of the big challenges that some companies have with getting credentials for credentialed scans, right? There's, even though the proliferation of some of the PAMs are out there, the privileged access management vaults and stuff are out there, it's still hard for some companies to get centralized credentials for scanning. So the agent solves that problem. So it's pretty easy to position there. And then obviously the laptop use case, right? Stuff's constantly moving around. We all have agents loaded on our laptops. That's how security monitors our devices because I'm on the corporate network maybe a couple days a month. Right. I rarely VPN in, so I'm never on the network when they're scanning. And that's how we use it. So it's specific use cases where it's really easy to get customers to move there. And we don't want to force them one way or the other. What we really wanted to do was allow customers to pick and choose the best way to get the data, whether it's an active scan or whether it's an agent or a combination of both. We don't really care. And with the new asset tracking algorithm, you can do both because now I can start to associate those devices, not by IPs, but by unique asset identifiers now.
And a similar question, how do you get people to overcome the passive vulnerability scanners requirement to sniff the traffic? And I know from firsthand in our startup, we have a similar device and deployment model. And there's a lot of like the devil's in the details. They're like, oh yeah, we can sniff traffic, but how do you tell them which traffic to sniff, where they should sniff it, and then like what hardware recommendations you have and what things you integrate with to collect that traffic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge for most organizations is getting the spam port. So people like Gigamon have helped us solve some of those problems, right? Because everybody wants a spam port now. So once you get the spam port, though, it's pretty straightforward, right? Once you plug it in, you don't have to identify what traffic to sniff. We're going to sniff what we need to sniff through that traffic stream. So that's pretty easy. Location is always the interesting one. Where do you put them, right? I think one of the advantages we have with the passive sensor over some of the deep packet inspection guys is we can go deeper into the network easier than just staying at the egress points. And so you could still use your DPIs at the egress points if you wanted to, but now we can give visibility to network traffic downstream that nobody else can. Just give me a span port and I can do it. So most organizations they're going to monitor data center. They might monitor a remote location as long as they can get span ports. So there's still a conversation between security and IT to get the span port. But once you have it, it's really easy. I have one running at home. I don't even have it running on that big of a box. I don't have that much network traffic, but it's interesting to see the results even on your own little home network of, hey, what the heck? What's that device? Where'd that one come from?
And what's interesting with that I always found with the passive scanner is, everyone just asks me, well, what if it misses a packet? And I'm like, it's kind of okay because
it doesn't matter.
Applications are very chatty, and they're going to send lots of packets.
I only need to see the packet once. I don't need to see every single packet.
The user agent string is a great example of that because I'm sending lots of requests from my browser that all have my user agent string in it. If I miss one, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to send 1,000 more in any given time period.
So it's not as our passive sensor is not as sensitive as like an IPS or an IDS would be.
That's to maintain state. It doesn't need to maintain state.
It doesn't need to maintain state. Or the deep packet inspection guys, right? The that have to do a lot of reassembly of the packet streams, and that we don't have to worry about that. We are looking based on the traffic that's coming by, and we only have to see it once to be able to flag either the asset or the vulnerability. We don't have to see it every single time.
Right. So what happens to the log correlation engine line of products?
It's coming.
Tenable had for actually quite a while.
Right.
And there was, that whole Gartner thing, like, is it in the SIM space? Is it not in the SIM space?
Yeah.
Even since then, we just talked about in the previous segment, right, how the SIM space is just like exploding in all these different directions, collapsing back down in certain areas. So, like, where does the log piece fall today for Tenable?
Yeah, so the log piece is going to come over to the Tenable IO platform. It just comes later in the year. I don't know exactly how it's going to look. This is where the product guys have more of the details. But think about separating the collection of the log data from the correlation engine itself. LCE, the old log correlation engine, was really both. It did the log collection and the correlation in one. What I think we're going to see is a split of that, where the correlation engine becomes a core service in the platform. Not only can it correlate the log traffic, it can also correlate the passive network traffic. So the correlation engine is something that's coming into the platform. And then the next discussion will be, how do we get the logs? We don't necessarily have to collect the logs ourselves anymore, right? Most organizations
Integrate with something.
Right, we're going to integrate with the guys that are doing log collection. If you've got a SIM in place and they're already doing the log collection, we don't have to go in there and collect the logs. We can take the log feed from them and put it into the correlation engine. This is where you see us moving in from that vulnerability management into threat and vulnerability management.
Right.
And the correlation engine is a big part of being able to correlate not only the log traffic and the threat intelligence data, but also the passive network stuff. And then we start to rebuild aspects of what's in the current security CV product, the continuous view.
And you'll be able to get threat and vulnerability correlation points from logs, which also goes hand in hand with correlating it to all of the other pieces of information.
Yeah, and we get the threat feeds coming in. So all that stuff will come into the new Tenable IO platform, like I said, as we get later this year. And that's really what continues to build out this foundation of threat and vulnerability management and that correlation and the ability to now understand not only the threats that are out there, but what are we actively seeing in the network based on the vulnerability information, so that we can do a better job of prioritizing. These are the top 5, 10, 15, 20 things that you need to be focused on, because not only do we see that it's vulnerable, it's exploitable, and oh, by the way, we actually see activity on the network that's trying to exploit it. That's what drives that priority kind of rating up.
So if I'm a customer in the enterprise today, I've got some security products, I've got a vulnerability scanner, whether it's open source or using someone else's solution, like, what's my top motivating factors to go to Tenable.io and check out what you guys have? Yeah,
so I think the big one is, one, kind of moving away from the IP address, right? A lot of companies, I still think, struggle with this whole concept of the IP and how many IPs do I have, and am I getting overcharged and all that other kind of stuff. And I'm constantly spinning up and spinning down stuff. There's a unique differentiator in the Tenable IO platform that makes it easier for them to license in those elastic environments. So that's one pretty straightforward one. But the other thing we're going to be, with the new APIs and the new SDKs that we built up against the platform, integration and integrating the ecosystem is a big part of where we're going to go. So the ability to leverage your existing investments in the other tools and working with our data, whether it's data in or data out, we're going to allow all those different scenarios to happen. In the old Security Center product line, it was pretty easy to get data out. It was a little harder to get data in. We've made the platform much more open, such that data in and data out is going to be something that's easy. So we can really start to build that integrated security system, and Tenable IO can be a part of whatever that holistic system is going to look like for a customer, whether they want to leverage our interface or another interface.
It's interesting.
The ability to allow that to happen, though, bidirectional integration is going to be
Because we just talked about that, like how much of a player do you want to be in a specific organization? And it sounds like it's customizable. You can use this for a lot or a little because we integrate in both ways, which is a great position to be in.
Yeah, we need to be much more open about that. And some of the work that's coming is the ability to bring in data from a lot of other sources that we traditionally wouldn't have brought them from. Why not?
Right.
We believe in our analytics. We believe in our dashboarding and reporting. And so if customers have this data and want to bring it into the platform, why not let them bring it in? If they want to just take the data out and put it somewhere else, okay, that's okay. Every customer is going to be a little different.
Right.
And that's the openness of the platform.
Awesome. So Tenable.io is the site.
Yep.
Now, do you know where Tenable will be events if people want to come talk more?
So RSA, obviously in 2 weeks, we will be demoing the platform at RSA at the booth. There's a number of webcasts and marketing activities, not only up to RSA, but all the way through into the summer months. So there's a whole marketing campaign behind the new platform, lots of different webcasts out there. But if you want to see us at the booth at RSA.
Awesome. Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching to Enterprise Security Weekly. We'll see everyone next week.